Hello there.
Catbus Russ here, and I'm just letting you know that the Poetic Critic and I are going to be at Quad Cities Comic-Con this weekend, May 23rd and 24th, at the Bend Expo in East Moline, Illinois. Whenever I'm at a Comic-Con, it requires a little more energy than I'm used to, just the running around and the 3 panels that I'll be presenting. What helps me get through that is Dubby Jitterless Energy Blend. I'll be carrying around the Retro Sherbet and Sweet and Sour Blue Raz flavors. Dubby is an energy drink powder with all of the vitamins and caffeine that you'll get in an energy shot, but without that battery acid taste. If you order from Dubby.gg, you will be saving half the price of what you spend on a regular 9-to-5 energy drink habit. And until Monday, May 25th, you get 20% off if you use promo code CatBusRuss at checkout.
Hey, let's talk about you, the ID10T community events at ID10T.com, like Russ Stevens, a.k.a.
Catbus Russ,
who has started a podcast called 90 for Chill, which Russ says is dedicated to movies with a runtime between 74 and 99 minutes, the time frame that I feel is ideal. Russ, I could not agree with you more. That is a fantastic idea. Russ goes on to say there are times you need a cinematic fix but don't have time for the latest Scorsese masterpiece or offering from a comic book universe. There's also times when you need a conclusion to prevent a binge costing you a whole night. My guests and I try to follow these guidelines as we chat up features that are definitely worth your time and are beyond easy to make time for. 90 for Chill, the podcast, can be found on all major podcast platforms at 90forchill.com, and that's spelling out 90, Ninety, 4 FOR, chill. So there you go. Thank you so much for sharing, Russ. Really great idea for a podcast. Events at ID10T.com for everyone else.
We'll be right back. Obey the law.
You do not have to be like me, because I know that everybody's social media feed is bombarded with ads for the new guilt-free snack. But you're scrolling on social media, so you're curious about a lot of things. And fortunately for me, I have a pretty high batting average when it comes to trying stuff from online sources. One of those hits was Deutsch Snacking Dough. It's cookie dough you can eat raw, you can bake into cookies in under 10 minutes, and it just fills you up in a few scoops. I like to eat a pound, maybe 2 pounds of chicken wing in a sitting, and still there's the urge to go for that third pound. But with Deutsch Snacking Dough, you take a couple scoops, and it just settles me down, and I feel full. Free of the top 8 allergens, they're gluten-free, low sugar, and have 3 times the protein of any other dough out there. And it's plant-based. And as I say, I can eat 3 pounds of wings in a sitting if I feel like it. I am a carnivore. Needless to say, I was skeptical about plant-based snacking dough, but my skepticism was proven wrong. So if you go down to the link in the description of this podcast, it will take you to my portal and you will get 20% off of your order. So find your new snack today, Deutsch Snacking Dough.
働き子や一人ひた走る者まだ見ぬ世界あるか希望を抱いて信じる者はただ光る情熱熱く燃えたぎるぜ誰にも止められない心の世界の何もかも俺のもの友情で結ばれた熱い絆よ邪魔はさせない我が道行くぜ戦え戦え戦え戦え戦えオタキ
Hello, and thank you for checking out I Dig Crazy Flicks with Catbus Russ. I am your host, Catbus Russ, and this is going to be my first panel from Missouri Comic-Con 2026. 90 for chill because movies are too long. And since we're still in the month of May, a celebration of anime, dare I say, hashtag anime, I decided to finally get around to watching Otaku no Video, a 1991 release from Gainax, the production company that would eventually do Neon Genesis Evangelion, and Fooly Cooly, FLCL, I believe, is something I didn't get a chance to watch in the early aughts, but I digress. It's the story of Kubo, a mild-mannered Japanese student in the early 80s whose main interest is tennis club, but runs into an old high school friend, Tanaka, who is part of the science fiction club, which is just a bunch of nerds. Eventually, this takes all of Kubo's attention, and after losing his girlfriend and just having a pain in the ass trying to find real jobs, they decide that they are on a quest to be the otaku of otakus, the Ota King. So Otaku no Video literally translates to English as fan video, so otaku is fan, Ota King is the fan of fans, I suppose. Alright, so that sets it all up. Through their collection in the early 80s, it's really a nice tribute to the entire genre. This is a good place to start off if you're trying to... Well, I don't know if it's a good place to start off, because if you watch these OVAs, how the American release does it, they do portraits of otakus, men in their early 30s talking about their time as fans, if not still fans, and some of them get into some creepy stuff. Just how Japanese culture kind of still, at least in the early 90s, was like, yeah, no, these are weirdos. Despite that they all follow like traditional Japanese mores, while Japan is trying to be more Western. So it's a great education in what Japanese culture was like in the 80s, I suppose. So I would get into enjoy a few actual shows before I'd watch this. But it's a nice tribute, though, to what made anime, at least in Japan, and I think that gives you a better understanding as an American. The animation style is fun. It actually uses footage from popular animes like Super Defense Fortress Macross or Robotech in the States. Even goes and uses drawings. Like it's an ode to what resulted in the creators of Gainax. A lot of just cultural references to document, and then as the story progresses, Tanaka and Kubo form their own garage kit company and try to bring that to the national forefront. They get bought out, but then they find a new way to get back to the top and eventually be the Ota Kings. So it's a fun little journey. I think you might want to just... Well, you have two options, at least if you get the... And I believe it's still released by... I don't know if it's available, but you can get the liner notes at least on the AnimeGo website. This DVD gives you the option of just playing the OVAs or one episode at a time, or the incorporation of the profiles of otakus to intersplice in it. Kind of like the ultimate cut of Watchmen, I suppose, in a sense. So it's a fun little experience. Definitely something, as I said, get into anime first and then go and learn the history of it through Otaku no Video.
Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Bring the noise.
So obviously I've seen South Park bigger, longer, and uncut. More people will come if you offer punch and pie. So let me get through my typical spiel when I start a podcast. The following podcast is protected under the laws of the United States and other countries. Any unauthorized duplication, distribution, or replaying is... Sorry, I usually have my notes up for that. Is up for the possibility of criminal prosecution, civil liability, or the wrath of the tall man for all our Phantasm fans. So, I think the title, 90 for Chill, speaks pretty easy to what I believe is that movies are way too long now. I mean, if I go to the movie theater, I don't mind a 3-hour movie, but I'm 46 years old. I typically work a 50-hour week. And when I want to relax around 10 p.m., I want to watch something, but I know I can't watch a Marvel movie because that's going to be a good 2.5 hours. Definitely can't catch up on Scorsese. And if you pop on Netflix, put on a show, you're going to binge. So you're going to lose an entire night that way. So I think, and when you go back to the 1980s, I would say all the way up till from the 30s to the 70s before New Hollywood, movies typically were 90 minutes around that time frame. Back in the early days of cinema, you did that because everybody's going to spend the night at the cinema because you didn't have TV. So that's how you got the B movie. You watch your A movie, watch a newsreel, maybe get a cartoon, and stick around for the B feature. And, back in the day, my mom would say, oh, we just watched Sleeping Beauty so many times in one day back in the 50s. Because nobody really cared if you were doing that. And I imagine the possibilities you could have, though, buying a ticket for a 3-hour movie at a cinema, and then do a little bit of theater hopping. Not encouraging. I'm just saying it's a possibility if we kept movies like that. So, in general, any kind of opinions on that, or some great movies that you think could be cut a little shorter? Oh, that Star Trek 2 was so much better than the Star Trek the Motion Picture because it was originally just going to be a made-for-TV feature. So that's why it was a nice, smooth 100 minutes, which I'd say anything between 70 and 100 is fair. So, I understand Star Trek the Motion Picture just because they were trying to capture this entire world that Star Wars created. So, with that said, at 3:45 I'm doing a panel, 1986 rad movies or bad movies, and we'll bring up concepts like Iron Eagle versus Top Gun. I favor the crazy story where somebody is going to save their dad from the Libyans instead of Tom Cruise going to flight school. Okay, so, yes? Well, I think that would be great. I mean, imagine the sales you're going to make at the concession stand with an intermission. But that's not what the cinemas have to deal with the distributor. So I happen to only really catch one double feature ever released for the cinemas. That was The Grindhouse back in 2007. Oh, goodness. And every show I heard was sold out. The one I was out on a Sunday evening was sold out. And these two movies bombed because they only got 2 screenings a day. Because you have to take your 4 o'clock all the way to your 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock. You lose the 6 o'clock, you lose the 10 o'clock because you're dedicated to 2 features. Now, perhaps the biggest mistake Tarantino and Rodriguez made with that one was not having an intermission. I mean, we get a little break, but you want to sit around to watch the trailer for She-Wolf of the SS. Nicolas Cage is Fu Manchu. So you really got to plan the experience out. Now, when I go to the movie theaters, I don't mind a long movie there because when I go to a sporting event, I'm chopping off 5 hours of my day, my evening. And I live in central Illinois, so if I'm going up to Wrigley, it's interesting, I've seen a lot of Cardinals stuff around here. Nobody really cares about the Royals?
It's more traditionally a Cardinal area.
Okay.
In history.
Well, I know they've been the only thing in the Great Plains until the Kansas City Royals came around. Well, you had the Kansas City Athletics before that.
KMOX, the radio station, had a very powerful tower and broadcast. You can pick them up in Arkansas, sometimes in Colorado and Kansas, so it's like pervasive that there are many Cardinal fans. But here, like, it's just many generations of it.
Okay.
Myself included.
All right. So, okay. So intermissions, but again, back to that, like, but I do know plenty of, like, my team captain of my trivia team has 2 kids, and she's like, I gotta wait till Avengers Doomsday gets to the home, because she's gonna have to get up and use the facilities. And I just suggested, to her, when you start feeling it, the bladder's only half full. And then I get the death stare, you haven't had 2 kids. So, now my favorite movie is Train Spotting, 1996, Ewan McGregor. And, that's a very brief story and, very unusual for a novel adaptation. Now, probably the movie I grew up with, though, was Star Wars. And, you have to knock it out of the park, I think, to be over 90 minutes long, or 100 minutes long. And before I expanded my podcast from 90 for Chill to I Dig Crazy Flicks, I would do something called the 12 parsec rule. So if you've seen Solo, you realize he rounded down. So Ghostbusters and Slimers off the screen at the 100-minute, 45-second mark. I'm rounding down. So that was the way I used to get movies on the show, or I'd make you do a marathon. Like, oh, you want to talk about Tombstone? All right, give me 3 other Sam Elliott movies under 100 minutes, and we'll call that the Midnight Feature. And that's a lot of work on the guest. My friend Andrew Teedy, who's been on the podcast a bunch, he was eventually telling me the wife was getting a little upset that he would lose an entire day doing a podcast, and I kind of sounds hypocritical for, a 2-hour podcast for a 90-minute movie. But there are definitely some that deserve it. Go back and Princess Bride. How can you not spend 2.5 hours talking about that movie?
Princess Bride, such a good movie.
And it's kind of funny, Rob Reiner, may he rest in peace, he was, during the Reiner run, I think it wasn't until he had A Few Good Men did he really go over 100 minutes. Smile Tap, a nice 100 minutes. Have not seen The Sure Thing, but just finally got around to Better Off Dead, which again feeds into the concept of my podcast, I Dig Crazy Flicks, because there is nothing rational or sane about Better Off Dead. I don't know how many people, since seeing it, $2 is an important reference for me. So, and then that was a good thing about the 80s as well. And another thing I liked about 100-minute movies, or I should say 90-minute movies, is you can get 4 of them on a VHS tape back in the day. And that's another thing about my podcast. I don't count the features credits. At least back in the 80s, I think you only got 1, maybe Young Sherlock Holmes was about the only time they popped a spoiler or hey, come back for the sequel. And I'm still waiting on that, Robert Zemeckis. I'm sorry, that's Barry Levinson, but and I think, do you guys think the Marvel end credit scenes are really worth sitting through the credits for?
Not anymore. At first.
Right. Oh, at first they were great. They were just bonus features for the fans, like the eating shawarma at the end of Avengers. Yeah, that's kind of worth it. And I don't like the fact I do watch the credits myself, just because people deserve credit, dare I say. But I think it was Civil War, Captain American Civil War, where we just see a clip. No, it was Ant-Man, where they just put a preview for Civil War at the end. And then they did that with Doctor Strange and Thor Ragnarok. But Thor Ragnarok, probably the one, if you need to offer a comic book movie to a non-comic book fan, I think that's one you can do. But the last end credit on that one being Jeff Goldblum. And, thinking about Jeff Goldblum, I think most of his great movies could be 90 minutes long. Controversial opinion then, right there. Jurassic Park, is that too long?
I don't know what you take out.
You take out the kids. You go, thinking of 90-minute movies, Michael Crichton's Westworld, 1973, directed it, and no kids in the movie, boom, just 90 minutes flat, and then you get robot horrors. I mean, dinosaur horrors would be interesting, but I think you just get more fun with Dick Van Patten getting to be sheriff and such in that world.
Well, I guess this is maybe a little bit of the philosopher in me. Why did they develop 90-minute movies to begin with?
90-minute movies, well, the runtime was back in the day when people would go to the cinema because you didn't have TV. So you expected 2 features, an A feature, and that's how we got the term B movie. Then the B picture. And as somebody pointed out earlier, Gone with the Wind had an intermission, so that's how everything worked. That's how it developed. And it's different in a lot of cultures. My first convention I ever went to was Visions 1998 in Rosemont. And that was the heyday of tape trading. And I was a big anime fan at the time. And I saw a Macross 7, the motion picture. Of course, I was going to spend $20 on that tape, get home, and watch the movie. And it concludes at 30 minutes. This is before IMDb, where I would have known better. So a lot of cultures still get as much on the screen as you'd like. And when you think about 90-minute movies, one that comes to mind that has evolved would be John Wick. 100 minutes, 141 officially, the credits end, right? And then it's how can you go and sit through John Wick 2? And it's John Wick. It's so awesome. They earned the extra 15 minutes for 2. 2 was so awesome, I thought they earned the extra 30 minutes for 3. And then I'm there for 4 and the 45 minutes. 2 hours, 45 minutes. Well, with that kind of conclusion, and they're still going to figure ways, it's Keanu's stuck with that role forever. There's no real conclusion. Daniel Craig kind of lucked out, I suppose. Which, then goes back to the evolution of the James Bond series. Dr. No, Goldfinger, From Russia with Love. None of them reached 2 hours. It wasn't until Thunderball. And perhaps with Thunderball, it's all the slow motion underwater sequences. If we want to see this through fruition, it's gonna take us a lot of time. And that's generally regarded as not one of the better Bond films. And then it goes off the rails with For Your Eyes Only, which I love, being a kid who liked Japanese culture, but does not age well. Instead of sending a Japanese agent, let's go and make Sean Connery do yellow face, essentially. But ninjas, as an 80s kid, that was the thing. And then it brings me to think about the Canon Pictures back in the day. They were a studio, ran from about 79 to 1990, and they would have features they locked Chuck Norris in for a contract. And, most of his movies, again, nice little 90 minutes because they had to, because they were going to move them on to the next picture. But it just reminds me of ninjas and such, American Ninja, which we're going to have another panel tomorrow, the 1985 action movie triple threat match. I believe it's 12:45, same room. And we're going to be discussing how that is the last year where I think action cinema could be violent for the sake of violence. So it's going to be Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando versus Sylvester Stallone in Rambo First Blood Part 2. And then the Cannon Group, American Ninja, Michael Dudikoff, Charles Bronson, Death Wish 3. And Chuck Norris had a couple movies in that time, but, and that's another rant I could go about Chuck Norris. He never really put much effort into his martial arts in the movies. I think he had that fight with David Carradine at the end of Lone Wolf McQuade, and then, I'm going to throw 2 kicks, and otherwise I'm going to be using machine guns like a stormtrooper, Uzis like a stormtrooper shooting, and I'm going to actually hit stuff. So I guess the Chuck Norris legend should have started all the way back in 85 instead of 2004. The memes, I should say. So, all right. Well, any, let's just have fun. Any movies you just want to talk about, and I can, doesn't matter the length, all right?
I was just curious, do you guys feel like directors are obligated to have it over 90 minutes? Because typically a movie that's under 90 minutes isn't very, not very good.
Well, it's all a matter of preference. Let's go and say your best directors. When you're a young director, I should say, do you really expect studios to give you a lot of money? Do you expect studios to give you any money? So they're probably going to be regarded as the most, I don't know, I want to say the most prolific, probably the greatest impact on cinema in the 21st century is Peter Jackson. His movies are run long now, but Lord of the Rings kind of requires that, or does it? I used to watch it's a popular thing in Sweden. They would just cut movies in half and then release one to the Americans, and or at least the TV edit version. Like I think that even happened with Ingmar Bergman down at the end of his career. It's like, oh yeah, no, this was actually shown on television first, and I found out about stuff like this watching the Millennium Trilogy, probably better known as the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo trilogy, on Netflix. Now I went to this, I love the movies, and this is before I got into really 90 for Chill was just an idea because I need something unique for a podcast because I'm not famous, sadly. I could talk about all the times I was robbed. I almost was Alex in Child's Play, but Agent let that one drop. And the wrestling career didn't go anywhere, despite my win over Seth Rollins a long time ago in Davenport. Not even Davenport, little bar in Donahue, Iowa, town of 500. But yeah, it basically with, when you start out, thank you for letting me ramble because it runs through my head. You look at Roger Corman, epic producer of the 70s all the way through the 80s, and he pretty much went via VHS and then sci-fi original movies near the end. So, and I think they literally did just have a bingo ball tumbler and like, all right, we got shark and we got octopus. Yes, those movies aren't great, but with Roger Corman, he gave the start to Martin Scorsese, Ron Howard, James Cameron. They all went through that system. So you got to get your licks in, and he's definitely wants these movies to be brief so he can sell them everywhere. And even Steven Spielberg, his breakout was actually Duel, a TV movie, and you know that's going to be 90 minutes long. So it's all what you do with it. Wes Craven never really goes under. I mean, once he had meta humor came into play, his movies are all pretty brief. 90 minutes for your Nightmare on Elm Street, and even Sam Raimi in the Evil Dead series keeps it pretty tight. And I don't know if any of the non-Raimi sequels are as good as Evil Dead 2. Probably better than Army of Darkness, just on the capabilities of these directors, Fede Alvarez. And then, well, you look at Fede Alvarez, he did Evil Dead 2013, and then he turns around and gives us the Don't Breathe movies, and then led him to Alien Romulus, which I thought was a lot of fun. So, you have to, basically a 90-minute movie is just something easy to sell. So, going back to Peter Jackson, have you seen Bad Taste? A movie he shot on the weekends. That's the only, if he was lucky to get it to 90 minutes. So that's, so I don't think 90 is really discouraging as a time to try hitting. I think it was James Cameron who said he was offered Rambo 2 and Aliens at the same time, and they just said, well, you take them both and you just write the 120 pages. So, and the typical rule is a page a minute, so. Whew. Pardon me? I'm a podcaster, so I typically have a guest with me, so I don't have to do all the talking. So thank you for letting me get that breather in. So, again, just anybody want to throw a movie out there? I can tell you if it's too long, too indulgent. Inception, I think that's kind of the point. Now, I think his best movie is still Memento. But then you go back with Christopher Nolan. I would say his first feature, Just Happening, is a 70-minute black and white film, and that got a Memento. And again, you got to keep it brief to get attention, and then go nuts afterwards. Inception, I think, is very solid, just because of all the layers to the feature. Now, when I see that kind of runtime for effectively a time travel movie and say Tenet, that I'm like, yeah, no. And I hear a lot of people talk about Oppenheimer being way too long. And I think that is just make sure the Academy finally gives you an Oscar type situation. And you can even go back to P.T. Anderson, Paul Thomas Anderson. I find my favorite movie of his is Punch Drunk Love, which is a nice 90 minutes, but once you get that exposure to a director, and it wasn't my first P.T. Anderson film, Boogie Nights, because I was in high school in the 90s. Of course, we're going to watch the movie about porn. Yeah.
Porky's Revenge.
Okay, so.
Sorry.
No. I actually like the 80s being brought up like that, because there's so many different, so many things that just don't age well, or we don't think age well. I really only watched the first one, and
I definitely like the second one better.
Yeah, and even for me, my parents listened to the MPAA. So I didn't get to see any of these cool R-rated movies until my 20s. Porky's is I think silly fun, and I know I've seen the highlights of Porky's too, and I get it. But it goes into that argument about man, do we have to cancel these movies? Like you're not really allowed to go and place a private area to amuse fellow high schoolers, never mind Peeping Toms.
Well, I liked Porky's 2 the most because of, I don't know, it felt like not just the Peeping Tom moms or whatever stuff, it almost has like a social message, so to speak, because they deal with the KKK.
Yes.
And they literally like shake their heads and everything. I think it's absolute classic.
Well, and
I'd be very, very sad if that one got canceled. I think it highlights part of our history.
Oh yeah, no, I'm somebody to try to push Chris Benoit for the WWE Hall of Fame because despite it's an awful moment, but acknowledge your mistakes. You could have stopped having Chris Benoit jump off the top rope to headbutt somebody, back in 2002 when you ran the entire world.
Right?
But when it comes to canceled movies, I always go back to Revenge of the Nerds. Yes. Which, after Timothy Busfield now, maybe we should not give him any royalty checks. But everybody says you can't have, you have to cancel that movie because, well, obviously the peeping Tom elements, the panty raids, the wearing the Darth Vader scene, let's just put it that way. But I think it's pretty clear in the title, it's the Revenge of the Nerds. Now, I'm not a vengeful person. I like to say I'm not an evil person, but I appreciate the art. And if you're going to go for revenge, go all out.
That's why I like Porky's too, because it's definitely really well thought out, planned revenge, and it's just perfect.
Yeah, and I think it was also something, but then again, it could also be Bob Clark just trying to get out of that franchise. So let's just put a solid end to it. But yes.
I was going to comment on Bob Clark, but all his movies are kind of all across the board. He did Black Christmas and Porky's and Christmas Story. But he made a lot of money. I just don't think he gets the recognition that he deserves.
Well, because Black Christmas made a lot of money, and Porky's made a lot of money. Christmas Story did not make any money until it got on the HBO rotation in the 80s. And, people are watching it, but that's not giving you any money, so rentals and then just the tradition of it is what makes it so huge. Like Blade Runner didn't make any money. The Thing didn't make any money.
I couldn't stand A Christmas Story.
I think we're just all so familiar with the beats now. But it's pretty, the only offensive thing is the Chinese restaurant at the end. And I appreciate it. If you're gonna do something bad, go for broke.
I just can't stand you're gonna shoot your ass like that. I don't know, seeing it as a kid, it just freaked me out, and it.
Oh no, that's something we don't get a lot now in these times, is that a movie is not made for. I mean, there's family movies that get adopted as family movies, and I would say A Christmas Story is not a family movie. It's a coming of age story, and you shouldn't let your kids see what Ralphie is doing. I'm not a parent, but all the stuff he does.
They showed it at school.
Yeah, no, it's
school.
They
right
used
before Christmas.
Oh, they used to show Secret of Nim if they're trying to kill time.
Yeah.
And but that's definitely Don Bluth was not making family movies. We'll talk about Don Bluth at the 345 1986 Rad or Bad Movies panel as we compare The Great Mouse Detective to the 19th century mice of the American Tale. So yeah, we'll talk about Fievel. No, it was basically back in the 80s. Oh, it's a cartoon. We can take our kids to it.
Oh God.
I mean, Ralph Bakshi, most of his stuff was in the 70s, so your kids weren't going to see it. But or it was too hip. Like, oh no, you can't take your kids to see Fritz the Cat. Or, let's see. Oh, the first one that immediately comes to mind is a slur. When you is the title. Coonskin is the. But it was all satirical, all observational, and really, really solid stuff. Wizards. You know, you're not gonna let your kids watch. Well, no, you probably did let your kids watch that because it's Mark Hamill. Like, so that's okay. So 15 minutes. So, all right, in the red.
Talk about adapting family movies. And, it's anime. I was working in the movie theater when Bad Santa came out.
Oh.
And a number of people that were angry about that movie that took their kids into to see it and wanted a refund. I'm like, it literally is called Bad Santa and rated R. What more do you need?
Right. But, when you look at the cast, I don't know why you would, like, Billy Bob Thornton, anybody would think he's family friendly. I mean, like, the most friendly thing I think he did was the voice in Princess Mononoke. And that's one you might not take your kids to, and, at a younger children to. This is definitely the most violent of Miyazaki's work. Shamefully, despite the Cat Bus moniker, I have not watched The Boy and the Heron. But again, 2 hours. Like, where am I going to go with that time? So.
What about runtime for Avatar? Do you think it's really justified for those movies?
No, I don't. I have not seen an Avatar. My ex wanted me to, and I bought the DVD, and I also bought the riff tracks. So I was going to make it through it one way or another. No, that is just a director at the peak of their powers. Like James Cameron. Well, his first movie, his first breakout movie. We're not talking Piranha 2, The Spawning, which was the Italians got the rights to the Piranha franchise from Roger Corman, or Roger Corman let the Italians make it. Flying Piranhas, essentially, was the Terminator, and that shows you. I can't cut anything out of the Terminator, but it's still only 110 minutes. I mean, it's bang, 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 and then he did Aliens, and that's just a little over 2 hours if you don't watch the director's cut, which, again, Cameron, though, proved how great he was with the Terminator. I still think that's his best feature. And, you keep making money, they're going to keep letting you do whatever you want. So if you think I need to have 3 hours to tell my story, are you going to make me $1 billion? Then we're going to give you 3 hours. So, that's an interesting thing to discuss, though, because we're now at a time of directors, I think, having more powers. Like, name a real movie star. Somebody who can open a movie just with their name today.
Like somebody
Like just an actor who can open a movie. John Travolta hasn't really opened a movie since Get Shorty. I think people put him ahead of Barry Levinson in that one, but that was right after Pulp Fiction. And then you look at it, Phenomenon didn't make any money, so. Timothy Chalamet. He is like A24 as an actor. Besides the Dune movies, I don't think his movies have really ever made much money. They are prestige features, which is why they tend to run long, is because, we want to get the awards for them. And I think if they get the awards, they presume people will want to go see it. Now I could give you Wonka. I will say he probably sold that one, because I hear it's. I mean, haven't gone around to it. I hear it's great, and that came from some.
It is nice. It's good.
Yeah, and that my great opinion came from somebody who was skeptical as all hell on it. And this is 2023, where she was my older sister. She's the poetic critic when she shows up on the show. That feature was that and Wish that in 2023, and she just did not like the idea of these features playing on our childhood as Gen Xers. Like, no, Willy Wonka was perfect, which it is. I mean, it's the only film I know where you get a kid saying the word twat, so.
I think the
What?
draw for Wonka is that it's not like the other Willy Wonka films. It's a
Yes.
It's a build-up, and
That's
that's what makes it.
Right, I could see that, but it's still don't. It's like Walt Disney after Solo, which is a great movie. It's just I think released at the wrong time of the year. But after Solo, that's the reason why Mark Hamill shows up in The Mandalorian. Is because they refused to recast the classic actors from the Star Wars series. So you're never going to see an adult Princess Leia again, or at least I hope not, since Carrie Fisher passed. But no, they won't. So Disney will not, at least, as of 2018, they will no longer recast. So that's why you don't get the Boba Fett prequel was canceled, everything like that. So yeah, no, there was a lot of paranoia about Chalamet because Gene Wilder is Willy Wonka. I'm sorry, John. No, I'm not sorry, Johnny Depp. Team Heard on this one. But yeah, so Timothy Chalamet I can see, but Tom Cruise I don't think does it anymore. I think it's just Mission Impossible.
Yeah, that's so played out. Like the
well,
last two ones that came out. Like, why? Just why?
Because I don't think he wants to do stunts anymore. So he had to conclude that one. I definitely think people are more in love with the Fast and Furious franchise. They could care less about I can't say they care less, but they want to see who is going to jump into the franchise. But I still think it's like Jason Momoa can't open a movie. You could say Aquaman, but I mean that's a DC comic book machine. So I don't think anybody went to see Fast X to see Jason. Well, maybe they did, but I haven't gotten past Hobbs and Shaw. So
I haven't even seen that one.
well, I went back to the original Fast and Furious, and I would say I ended up hating it. One, it's Point Break. Point Break might be one of those perfect movies I did, or maybe I just have a thing for Lori Petty. I can't think of anything to cut out of that one. But yeah, no, just putting a new a coat of paint on it, and then I'll just leave the Fast and Furious because then I'm speaking ill of the dead. So, so I think it is the time. And that's just a weird state of cinema right now, with the fact that, I can say, directors have all the power. I go and show somebody my DVD collection. We're probably talking, close to 1,000. And if they ask, why isn't the Saw? So many of the directors actually put their names close to that, but I alphabetize it by director. So if somebody is looking for Pulp Fiction and the Peas in my library, they're not going to find it there, and I'm saying that it's basically, and so many directors are pretty obscure. Like, I don't think anybody except a cinephile knows that Bob Clark is responsible for, as I say, besides cinephiles, fans, who just love the idea of cinema, know that Bob Clark did The Christmas Story and Black Christmas. You'd have to, or Porky's, director for hire, essentially. And like Ivan Reitman, people know Ghostbusters. If you can throw another Ivan Reitman at me, and I can probably answer it, but...
Twins.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, he had his run, and then he did Ghostbusters too, which is not a bad movie, just... I think the natural evolution of the franchise. Now, Jason Reitman, I would say I have seen Afterlife. Haven't gotten around to Frozen Empire. I think he really knew what the franchise was about, and I think that's just making some like kids telling the stories, which is like I'm not opposed to remakes and such because maybe somebody has a new twist on it. Occasionally it works, and there's also unique things about it. Like, I would say, Kate Beckinsale is so much fun in Total Recall. It might, if you're a fan of hers, give it a watch. But goes back, makes you think of with Total Recall, the remake, makes you go back to RoboCop, since it's Paul Verhoeven. And that's an easy 100 minutes. And then, again, once you prove yourself with 70 to 100 minutes, then you get to indulge. Total Recall, good 2 hours, 15 minutes, I think. Showgirls, 2 hours, 45. Okay, well, some people regard that as truly his finest just because of how cynical he was and sarcastic. All right, so... I think we are about the time to wrap up. Any movie suggestions, let people know what they should be watching, or not what they should, but expand some palettes. Like I opened the podcast with me talking about Phantasm, which is my favorite horror movie, and it's just, the impact of that one influenced the Star Wars franchise with Captain Phasma. That was solely because J.J. Abrams liked the Phantasm movie. And never mind, you get a guy it gets later in the series, but you get a guy, an ice cream man is your hero, and he's carrying a quad-barreled shotgun. So, I don't know if that doesn't sell you on it. So, anybody want to pitch out there?
Memoirs of a Geisha.
Memoirs of a Geisha, yeah. I was in my early 20s at that time, so it was kind of like,
It's one of my favorite movies.
Oh no, and I should
So artistic.
Yeah, no, I think it's Ang Lee. No, I don't think it's Ang Lee, but Zhi Zhang from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which, yeah, that one. I'd have to do a little work on Lee to see if we gave him, because I think he broke the ice storm. Just a very weird director, honestly. He's won 2 Best Directors, Life of Pi. No, I'm sorry, it was Brokeback Mountain. Oh, and Life of Pi. And then he does Gemini Man with Will Smith versus Will Smith. Any M. Night Shyamalan fans out there? Yeah, that's kind of what I expected. I would just say if you see anything with Roger Corman's name attached to it, you might want to give it a watch. There's probably something golden about it. I go to the annual B Fest at Northwestern, which is a 24-hour marathon of B movies. So you'll at least have fun with a Roger Corman feature. I guess that's the final question then. Are we looking more, when we go to the cinema, are we looking for art or are we looking to just have fun?
Depends on what I'm in the mood for.
Oh, we all have moods, yeah. But all right, well, thank you very much for your time, your patience. Again, I'll be doing a panel at 3:45. I'm thinking Alan Tudyk's going to kick my ass, but I'm going to put up a fight. But love the turnout. I drop my podcast every week. That's I Dig Crazy Flicks with Cat Bus Russ on Wednesdays on all your favorite podcast apps. And, I'd like to end my podcast with a little quote from David Tennant as Crowley in Good Omens. Can I get a wahoo? Thank you.
Your cable TV is experiencing difficulties. Please do not panic. Resist the temptation to read or talk to loved ones. Do not attempt sexual relations, as years of TV radiation have left your genitals withered and useless.
Well, I'll be damned.
Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to that panel from Missouri Comic-Con. Thank you, Missouri Comic-Con, for having me out there to present I Dig Crazy Flicks. And if you'd like to support the podcast, rate and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. 5-star reviews preferably. Be as honest as you'd like in the comments. I won't take it personally, and I will learn from them. You can sign up for the I Dig Crazy Flicks Patreon. That's patreon.com/I Dig Crazy Flicks. For $3 a month, you'll get yourself ad-free podcast, access to the original 90forchill.com, the podcast feed, so you can determine if I've evolved as a podcaster or not. You'll get yourself either a waterproof sticker for signing up or a refrigerator magnet, and you will get a shout out on each episode as long as you're a subscriber. So let me thank the Scoop Staley. I promise I will get around to watching the AEW Collision from Peoria, Illinois at the beginning of May to see hang out with Tony Schiavone and Nigel McGuinness. Thank you, Dad, for helping me out and maybe even helping the Scoop out in that sense. And thank you, Tim Bates. You can find him on episodes about 1989's Bloodsport in Space, Arena, and 1988's horror comedy classic, Night of the Demons. Those are on this I Dig Crazy Flicks feed. You don't have to sign up for the Patreon for those, but thank you, Tim. And I think the best way to support the podcast is come on and be a guest. All you need is a movie, a theme, a director, an actor. As long as the films are dealing with off-the-wall concepts, I think we can fry up a slice of gold. But if you have something a little more down to earth, like a classic Richard Linklater movie, as long as it's between 70 and 100 minutes, I'll give you at least 40 minutes on Zoom. You can sign up to be a guest on idigcrazyflix.com. You can send an email to rustthebus07@gmail.com. That's RUSSTHEBUS07@gmail.com. Or you can follow me, reach out on my social medias, Blue Sky primarily, at CatBusRust, but you can also find me on Instagram and Threads with the same handle. And before we go, let me thank Station Marie Harden for being my inspiration, keeping me out of too much trouble, and I hope she's doing the same for everybody else she touched in her life. And I hope she's squeezing the ectoplasm out of Skimbleshanks the One-Eared Angel. And until the next episode, thanks for checking out I Dig Crazy Flicks.
Can I hear a wahoo?
This podcast was made possible by the love and support of Dave and Cindy Stevens, Rory Stevens and Allison Higgins, Danny Daniels, and Stephanie Smith.
Long live Flash! You've saved your Earth. Have a nice day.